start off with?
Visitors?
Find my footing, excuse me. Okay, I can't even see over there. Go to the visitors. Isn't anybody down there? Okay.
I'm Carl Cromer, Food Service Director for your school. I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
My name is Kathleen Nye. I am actually a student at Liberty University Online, and one of my assignments was to sit in on a school board meeting, so here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you. Okay, that's a first. That's good. All right. The reports first.
Okay, we'll go to high school principal, Mr. Lake.
I'm gonna keep mine short. We're plugging away. It's grade 7 and 8 PSSA testing window. It's coming up in April. We're currently 22 school days away. And the reason I can rattle that number off quickly is we develop a 30-day plan, 30 school day plan for all 7th and 8th grade teachers, not just the ELA and the math and science teachers, but we met in a faculty meeting a couple weeks ago before that 30-day window started, and every 7th and 8th grade teacher has that information in their hands. Student data from previous benchmarks for the year, the eligible content that will be on the tests come April, and that's what we're hitting right now in grade 7 and 8. Starting next month, then we'll hit Keystone exam prep, and that, because those tests come up in May. So right now, that's what we're concentrating grade 7 and 8, and that's the most important thing that's going on here at the high school. So that's all I have, Mr. Mansfield.
Thank you. Mr. Keeling?
Story at Perry and Hartman is also PSA tests are coming. I try to tell teachers, staff, students, look to Hayes in the barn. I believe in my teachers, I believe in the kids. I think I'm the least stressed out of everybody about the tests, because I get it. Our kids are good kids. They're gonna do their best. I can't do anything about it, you know, besides everything we got the whole time, and I think we've done that. So Mr. Labe said the timeline that we're on, and we're getting up there, we're getting close, but the last thing I like to do is see kids getting stressed out about it. I know they do, but I don't want them to. So I think our kids will do fine. A couple different times I've heard from the board, they're interested in making a schedule for the Wolverine workshop. We're gonna pilot a schedule out there for the last 9 weeks to see how that goes. We're gonna block in 2 hours of time per week. Mandatory, everybody takes their class at least once. That second hour will kind of be an optional, but it'll be in the schedule. Want to see how that works. Obviously, Mr. Setzenvan's going to be split between 2 buildings next year. So I want to get, while it's still on a smaller scale, want to get a good idea of how that feels. So we'll know that, and we'll make a better informed team decision as we go. The CLO visits, next, is it next? Gosh, it's next Tuesday. And sponsored by the PTO. It's a really cool sort of musical theater presentation, and it's called something like the Innovative Innovators of Pittsburgh, or the Greatest, or something, and it looks really neat. They provided educational materials for our kids. Our teachers are gonna supply some of that, so the kids go into the assembly knowing something. It looks like a really cool assembly about Pittsburgh, so that's gonna be at Hartman in the morning, Perry in the afternoon. We're actually gonna use both stages. The temporary stage at Hartman will be up. We're gonna clear the stage at Perry, which I've never seen, and we're gonna have real live performance on stages, and I'm crossing my fingers that it goes really well. Lawrence County Reading Festival is coming up. A little nervous about that, because in the past we've sent unlimited number of kids. Everybody with interest got to go, and this year we were told by the director, you can only bring 20 from each school. And we've taken probably 60, 75 kids from Hartman before. I had to come up with a plan. I hate to say it, I made it a competitive thing. I don't know what else to do. So I'm getting some, I'm gonna say, independent contractors to help me make a quiz on the 4 books. We're gonna give the quiz to the kids, and I'm gonna take the 20 best kids. I wanna take them all, but it's not my decision. So if you hear anything about that, yeah, it was kind of my decision, but I was put in a spot I had to do that. I have one more thing in my notes here. Read Across the World is an event that some college students from Slippery Rock University are going to come to Perry and Hartman and perform or put on for our kids. Kids are going to rotate through stations, and the Slippery Rock prospective teachers are going to teach a little lesson, spend a couple hours with other kids. I'm real excited about that. That is not next Tuesday, it's the 22nd, it's the following Tuesday. Anybody have any questions for me real quick?
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Leslie, the world of special ed.
Currently have permission on 9 out of the 11 early intervention students coming in for, to school age services next year. So those evaluations are being completed, now. So met with speech pathologist, Mrs. Masiosi, Rebecca, our intern, and they're going to start all of those services. We have students potentially in autistic support, learning support, emotional support, maybe life skill support and speech language support, and a couple general education students as well. So we have the whole spectrum. Currently have completed 19 PASA assessments in both reading and math. Those videos are uploaded and ready to go to the state, so that's very nice. That has to be done by the end of this month and we're good to go. Just an update on policy 819, so that's suicide prevention, intervention, and awareness. Debbie and April, Ms. Swish and Ms. Spellman have been going into the 8th and 11th grade classes to talk and educate students on mental health issues, suicide prevention and intervention. They've been talking about and working with them on depression, what is depression, defining that, talking about other mental health disorders, suicide, including suicidal ideation, as well as suicidal attempts, rage, as well as just discussing general wellness. And it's okay to have some of those feelings, but we want kids to be okay as well. They are currently in the process of working with Mr. Duano and Marshall Funeral Home on suicide awareness as well as grief lessons. So I think that's pretty exciting as well. So,
Thank you.
can I ask what Marshall, how is that being integrated? I'm not sure. I think it's just a matter of the grief lessons, and I don't think Marshall is doing it. I think they're talking with Marshall about resources.
In the past, it's been Erla, that's come into the 8th grade health classes, but I can't, I'm not 100% sure, but that's what she's done in the past. She set that up with Mr. DeBona, comes in and talks to the 8th graders.
And Ms. Swish is working with them and Ms. Spellman as well, just so that they can get some things together. Thank you.
Okay, revenue and finance.
Revenue
Mr.
and
Zarone.
Finance. Regular monthly reports for February will be presented to the board on Thursday evening. And then we're to that point where we want to start talk about the budget. So we've suggested several dates there. I was kind of wondering if you wanted to look at those dates and go down that road, or whether there's some other plan that you'd like to put in place for the 2016-17 budget. We would have potentially, again, April 6, 20, 27, and May 4. Preliminary budget would be approved the Monday following the May 4th date, and then you could actually have meetings into June until final adoption on June 13th. But again, it's really up to the board how you want to proceed this year, so we're looking for some direction.
Anybody have any thoughts other than using these dates? I believe they're all Wednesdays, correct?
They're Wednesdays, and we'd like to start them at 6 o'clock as opposed to 7, so we can get a little more work done before it starts to get late.
What are the penalties, or are there any penalties assessed to the school districts for not passing a budget?
I believe it's a $300 a day penalty administered by the PDE on the school district.
Thank you.
Questions, input, those dates okay?
Everybody's all right then with the Wednesdays?
We try to stay away from Thursdays because of the VOTAC board meetings. Item number 3, the Midwestern Intermediate Unit budget. That comes down to us from the IU. It's gone over with the superintendents, and then a copy was sent out via the email, and you have a hard copy in front of you. What I can tell you about it is it's a $4 million budget. It's slightly less, a very small percentage less than last year's. The Ellwood City School District's contribution is $16,912, which is exactly what we paid the IU last year. That money's used for general administrative costs, their executive director, their business office, their maintenance people, so on and so forth. So it's general operating expenses. That money is paid to them simply by taking a deduction from the state subsidy that we get. So it's not that we're writing a check, it's by deduction. They do handle about $98 million when it's all said and done in various other programs, federal and state grants and so on and so forth. So that will be on the agenda on Thursday evening for your consideration. As will be the consolidated federal programs application. Over the last bunch of years, we have used the intermediate unit to administer our Title I and our Title IIA federal programs. We pay a percentage, 5%, which costs us approximately $27,000, but the IU stands both the compliance audit, the local audit. They handle all of the supply purchases, and they oversee the entire program to make sure that we're in compliance with all the rules and regulations of Title I and Title II. Currently, there's a major initiative policy-wise with Title I, UGG, I guess it's called, but it's a lot of rules and regulations that are difficult to keep up with, and they have a staff of 5 or 6 people up there that are handling that and taking care of it. The federal money flows to the IU, and from the IU it then flows to us as local revenue. Again, 24 out of 27 of the schools participate in that consortium, and it is one of the largest in the state, if not the largest. Number 5, tax and revenue anticipation note. Kind of interesting, it developed that when you do a tax and revenue anticipation note, you have to borrow the money and repay the money in the same fiscal year. Well, we're to the point of the year where by the time we would have to borrow the money in May, we would have to repay it in June, and if there were no state budget, we wouldn't have the money to repay it. So the next step and the next consideration is what's called unfunded debt, where you have to go to the Court of Common Pleas to get authority to borrow money that is not funded. Now, in our case, we would start that process probably in April with our fingers crossed that the state passes a budget that will release our basic ed money to us. And then we'd have to start proceeding because my cash flow shows us that we can probably get through mid-June, and then at that point in time, we're not going to be able to make payroll or accounts payable. We have started to hold some of the payments to try to conserve cash, but there's just not really a whole lot that we can do with what we can hold. So what would happen then eventually is that Mr. DeCaro, bond counsel, and our financial advisor would get involved in this thing, just like we're issuing bonds. We would issue the bonds and then turn around and pay them back in August because our tax revenues would start to flow. And again, I've got my fingers crossed that none of this happens, but it's the next step and we need to start thinking about it. So we'll come to you in April if there's no state budget with a resolution of some sort giving us authority to move forward.
Mr. Zarrow, what's the kind of cost that's associated with that? I know some of the loans were low.
The cost is going to be associated with because this is something that we'd need bond counsel for. So I'm thinking you're looking at between $7,000 and $10,000, $12,000 for that service to write those opinions. I mean, it seems like $7,000 to $8,000 for our financial advisor, $6,000 for the solicitor. I don't want to put numbers in, they're going to charge what they'll charge, but it's going to start to get very expensive.
To even start the process.
Yeah, that's why I want to kind of hold off as long as we possibly can, but again, given the schedule of board meetings that we have, I mean, we're going to have to be able to move forward because at some point, Solicitor DeCaro would have to get us on the docket at the Court of Common Pleas, I think. And then we would have to kind of go, by May, we're going to have to be doing something because when we get to the June 13th board meeting, I'm projecting we may not make that June 15th payroll. So we got to start the process. I really hope that it doesn't come to.
But we're looking to start the process next month.
Yeah, what I'll be doing once and I'm not going to have anything on the agenda for Thursday, but just kind of informational that I'll be in touch with Mr. DeCaro and I'll be in touch with bond counsel, and we'll start getting things in line for April authority to move forward.
Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. DeCaro, what if all that happened and we went to the Court of Common Pleas? Do they regularly authorize people to go ahead and issue unfunded debt?
you say regularly,
I mean,
it doesn't
is it
happen.
right?
uh,
Can they say no?
Very much. They could say no, but I would be surprised if the court would deny the request, given the circumstances here, so.
And I think they would also be aware that our tax revenues would start to flow heavily in August and September, so it would be short term, but there'd be cost. I mean, there'd be cost involved.
And Ms. Stone, one of the things we could do is reach out to the other districts. A lot of them, if not all of them, are probably in a similar situation. So I think if there are multiple requests of the same nature to the court, it'd be harder to deny all 8 county schools.
With this bond, I have to ask now, you say we'll be able to start repaying once we start getting some revenue in, but if we still don't have a budget, then we're gonna run into the same thing a few months down the road. So is that
Well,
kind of the way
that-
the process works?
That's why we have a financial advisor. I mean, we'd have to sit and kind of think about how that's all gonna work out. You know, maybe we would have to put the debt out there. Again, I don't know that.
Right.
I would think we would work something out that's most advantageous to us, that's within the parameters of the law. I mean, I think you're right. You wouldn't want to pay it back with that money, then come to find out 3 months later, you don't have a
You don't
15,
need it
16, or
again.
16, 17 budget. So, I mean, I'll let
That's a lot of
those
money.
people kind of, they're more experienced than me, and we would definitely talk through it.
I just know that there's lots of rumors going around the budget, but there's been talk that, it might be November after the elections before we have a budget, and that's, gonna
For
really.
either year.
Yeah, so it's crazy when you're sitting in our seats, because we have a job to do that's almost impossible to do, but I hate to see us start and pay for something, then to have it undone, to only have to redo it, and then have to pay again to start the process again, so.
Yeah, well, I think the people we'll be dealing with will have a pretty good idea. They'll lay the options out for us, and we can kind of decide.
What if we just stopped operating?
Well, that's a legal question that I think that I can't address.
Pennsylvania Department of Education sent out a list of things schools should do if they want to close. And just looking at the list is almost impossible. I mean, you have to notify your parents 60 days in advance, that's prepared to send them to other schools. I don't know, legally,
Well, that's
payroll
good.
wise, I mean, the list was just like, I know the legislature was offended by it, but
I mean, the way that I see that list is that it's kind of being done on purpose to not close school as the end result, so, I mean, what are we supposed to do? If we're not gonna have money and we have to incur $30,000 of debt, roughly, estimate, to just get more unfunded debt, I mean, that's
It's crazy.
ludicrous. I mean, that's crazy, so. I think we should keep our options open. I know the list is probably terrible, but, I mean, if we're talking 2 years, we haven't had a budget. It's killing us.
And it doesn't look like there's any chance of getting one.
No, it doesn't. So after November.
Send that list, what they gave you, I'll take a look at it. I mean, you're gonna have to start seeing what extra programs.
I asked the question. We gotta get it. We gotta get some kind of pressure. We need a budget.
Yeah, there definitely
You
needs to
know?
be a budget.
So it's,
No doubt.
I mean, how are we supposed to keep on operating? We don't have any money. Yeah, let's go 3 years down the road.
Exactly. Anybody else have any questions?
yeah, they're gonna murder.
Any other questions about consolidation?
Okay, number 6, I had written a memo and put it at your spot. We actually had a meeting with the county assessor, who indicated that he has got the software and the wherewithal to implement interim tax assessments. What basically had been happening is that if somebody built a home, they completed the home in November, for example, that tax liability for that new home would not find its way to the tax duplicate till the following July, when the tax duplicates went out. So what he is proposing is that with the software that he has, that we monitor the building permits and so forth from the period July 1st through December 31st, issue an interim tax bill in April. then monitor the January changes from January to June 30th, and issue a interim tax bill in August. Once these bills went out, they would actually create duplicates at the county assessor's office. Those would go to the responsible tax collectors. The bills would go out, the individuals would have 20 days at discount, 20 days at face, and thereafter it would be penalties. So it's a way of getting additional tax revenue into the school district. It's on a prorated basis. So if you finish something in November, you would only pay December and then January through June. So, I mean, that's the idea. I think most of the school districts that were at the meeting are going to their boards with a resolution at a voting meeting to implement the process. I can't say how much additional revenue it's going to generate in Ellwood City. The assessor did have some information which she had spot checked some of the other districts. And for example, at Wilmington, well, it was $2,000 additional dollars at Wilmington. But Laurel is $44,000. Shenango could have garnered $22,000. Neshannock was $38,000. Union was $10,000. Mohawk was $35,000. He did not get to Ellwood City to look at our property, so I can't tell you what he might have found. But there seems to be some money out there that we could collect if you wanted to go to an interim tax collection process.
And the only cost associated with that is compensation for the tax collector?
Yeah, and I guess if the board wanted to move forward, then I would submit the resolution on Thursday to get that into place, and then I would work with some of the other school districts to see the type of compensation that they're looking at. I think it's gonna be most sense to be on a per bill basis, because of the 5 tax collectors we have, and the wampum tax collector may never see an interim tax duplicate. I mean, and it may be 3 or 4 properties one year and no properties for the next 2 years. So I don't think, from an expense perspective, it would be that great. But again, I would try to come up with something based on a per bill basis, similar to what we're doing now based on our numbers and the costs that we're paying. Any other questions or concerns on that? Okay, I guess good news, bad news. Number 7, E-rate. E-rate is a situation where they collect money from each of us for our telephone use. You pay a little bit on each bill that you get each month. They take that money and they pass it on to schools and libraries so that they can have better and more technology. It's now gone to the point where they're calling it Category 2 type services, which are internal connections and infrastructure. In the most recent program, each school is entitled to up to $150 per student on a per school basis. So when you take all of our schools, $150 cap times the number of students, we're eligible over a 5-year period for $265,650. Last year, we spent $26,784 of that upgrading our firewall. Now, Mrs. Ruckert has indicated that we can get the most bang for our buck this year if we put new switches in and upgrade our wireless system. So we went through the E-rate mini bid process. We got pricing in. The costs that we got in were, I think, $114,010. Now, under E-rate, they would reimburse us 70% of that cost, so it would cost the district $35,000. So what I kind of need is, I'm trying to develop a very preliminary budget, is a head nod or direction that, yeah, we want to do $114,000 worth of work at $35,000 cost to the district. That's the number that I would have to include in the 16-17 budget. Again, I know we don't have a budget or too much information from the state. And it's kind of hard to make that decision, but we have 5 years to spend it. This is year 2 of 5, or 3. This is year 3 of 5. And not that we're afraid the money's going to go away, but you never know if the money's not going to be there year to year.
Didn't we do something similar to this last year? Didn't we install some switches or something?
We did firewall last year.
Firewall.
Yeah, this will replace all the stacks in all the buildings and upgrade the lines and just sort of getting ready for the, if there's ever any desire to go one-to-one, the infrastructure then is in place. These will install prices and company comes and does it all.
But this isn't anything that's gonna cause any issues with the upgrading of the bandwidth for,
I think this is
It all
why you
goes
almost
together.
need to do it, right?
Yep.
Switches, yeah, it's all tied together. You have larger bandwidth coming in, increased switch stacks and wireless to push it out.
questions, comments, thoughts? Adding to a budget that we don't have.
Exactly.
It's kinda hard to give direction when you don't
I
have
don't
a
know how you
budget.
spend it when you don't have it,
That's-
and you don't know what you're getting, so.
I know. When do we have to know?
We need to get this done, we need to have the contracts approved. There's an E-rate process, so we need to get this on the agenda and taken care of if we're going to move forward with it this month.
Yeah. Why is everything such a rush? I mean, we can't even absorb it for a month.
Yeah, everything we do, we have to be rushed, and
Yes.
the legislature is under no time.
Right. They get 2 years.
I don't know why they don't get fined every day like we do, they don't pass it.
Yeah, there are strict deadlines with, I mean, and I don't,
Yeah.
470 and a 471, and you gotta be on schedule and you can't miss it.
I wouldn't have a house. Yeah. We got them from my parents.
Well, they're gonna need direction to put it on.
I'm in favor of it just because of the 70%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't do it, we
You don't-
lose that opportunity, then we're further behind.
Well, we do have still 4 years left, right? 3 years
I
left.
think Ellen said we're
Maybe it'll
year
just-
five.
Here's year two.
This year,
This
three.
is our third year.
Yeah, this is our third year of 5.
Right.
Yeah.
The cost will be more, and it might not be guaranteed if we wait.
Every month we get an item like this. Yeah.
We're learning.
The head nod for me.
Okay, I got it.
That's one.
I'm in favor of that also, Mr. Dillon.
As am I.
Before, I will.
Mrs. Gray, I guess you guys got skipped in the middle there.
Yes.
In favor?
Ms. Toman,
Sure.
Mrs. Woodhead.
It's like, take your arms. twist
My
them
hands
back.
to the fire, I guess I have
I mean,
to.
that's what I feel
like.
Yeah, you feel like
Mr.
your
Raw.
arms are twisted behind your back.
You're against it?
Okay, any other questions or? And then last but not least, on the revenue and finance, we've seen this 2 or 3 times over the years. Mr. Mazan has purchased a couple of different properties in Beaver County. The Beaver County system is different than the Lawrence County system where they combine, I guess, 2 parcels and they have 1 lot number. Well, in both situations, when he bought the lots in Beaver County, there's miscommunication between Beaver County and Lawrence County, and when it gets to Lawrence County, the board is asked to forgive taxes on just 2 parcels. And the reason we're asked to do it is because the taxes are sold free and clear without tax liability in Beaver County. That doesn't get communicated to Lawrence County, so Mr. Mazan has to come to the board. We've now got it figured out that there are 3 parcels to each property that he bought. We missed 1 parcel back in 2010, so we're just trying to catch that up. So I'm hoping to have that on the agenda for Thursday evening to finally get this thing taken care of. And that's it under revenue and finance unless there are questions.
Any other questions?
Before we move off of revenue finance and talking about the budget, for long-term solutions, perhaps it's time for this board to entertain the thought of approaching our neighbors at Riverside about sharing costs or possible mergers into one school district. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but.
Well, hopefully with the new board that they have over there, there might be a little bit different sentiments, but
There's not.
If you remember, Mr. Cortez,
There's not.
when we tried before, it fell on deaf ears.
Yeah, that's true. That doesn't mean we shouldn't stop asking. All of us are in this position now. Even after the budget's passed, you know, there's still uncertainty in future.
Well, I do agree with you there, but I've already been approached, and there was already word out to not approach them. So I think we already know where we stand there, but we have been approached by another school district. We had spoken with Mr. Mancini about maybe acknowledging that. And I don't really want to divulge too much because we haven't spoken to anybody, so directly. It was all done individually, so until we speak directly with the board, I wouldn't want to say anything, but I do agree with you. I think that we need to start making long-term goals because, I mean, even once the budget is passed, we are still in financial disaster heading towards there unless they actually do come up with more money, which I'm not holding my breath there.
Just so I understand, the Riverside School District has unofficially let us know not to approach them about that.
I guess you could put it unofficially. I mean, I was directly told not to. So, I think Mrs. Woodhead, you've also heard similar.
I plead the fifth, but I will not be approaching them with any of you.
Unfortunately.
Mhm.
I agree, that would make it the most sense, but. Anything else before we move on?
Okay, personnel, executive session items, athletics, facilities, community, facility requests, EC Amateur Baseball Federation requests use of the Lincoln High School large and small gyms for skills assessment for minor and little league players on Sunday, March 13th, 2016, from 2 to 6. And then we also have the request from Mr. Morella, the athletic director, about the softball field maintenance proposal. It was enclosed in your communicator from Vance's Landscape Supply, Beaver Falls, for repair of the softball field in the amount of $7,850. Did confirm again that today with Mr. Morella that the borough has committed half of that, so it'll be half of that cost to us and half to the borough to work on that field.
And then we still need to come up with the cost for the tarp.
Tarp.
We're going to do that, which was another $2,000 or $3,000, I believe, is what it was. Yeah, the tarp was between $2,800 and $3,500, so that would need to be added on.
Concerning A,
It's after 1. After 1 o'clock, they're allowed to.
I thought you said no Sundays at all to the coaches.
This is little kids, it's community, it's not school related.
Yeah, this is not a school guy.
Just
Yeah,
making sure
I know
that.
exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
I was thinking the same thing, but it's not the school function.
Okay.
Is, just related to that, is that gonna be a problem with anybody? Because if everyone's okay with that, they're gonna communicate that to parents to give them some notice, since it is on this coming Sunday. Any problems with that? All right, thank you.
Unless we would change our whole Sunday usage policy,
That's for another time.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything on number 2?
Is everybody okay then with moving forward on the softball maintenance proposal? Do we have it in writing that the borough is going to pay? Pass?
I asked him today, he said yes, so
Okay.
he's been talking to whoever their person is, and so. Education, Student Affairs, field trip enclosed, Ms. Jonica Walters, gifted K-12, requests permission to take 2 Ellwood students, 1 elementary and 1 junior high, possibility of some more.
Excuse me, Maddie McCommons did make,
So
she
one
qualified
more.
today, so we have
So
3.
one more?
Yes, we do,
Okay, to the, so it'd be 2 elementary.
correct.
National Academic Games Tournament, Marriott Marquis Hotel and Convention Center, Atlanta, Georgia. Departure will be between 7 a.m. on Thursday, April 22nd, returning approximately 10 p.m. on Tuesday, April 26, 2016. Travel will be by bus or air. Estimated contribution, school contribution is $2,600, $2,685 for that. We do have a policy where we pay $500 per student, up to $3,000 total. This also includes Jonica's hotel trip and all, and so on. I believe they go down with other schools and share bus costs and try to keep it as low as possible, but, so.
I have a question. So, we would be paying for them to go to Six Flags and to the aquarium?
Yes,
Why?
I think it's part of the trip that the person from Mohawk organized. It's on their way back, I believe.
Yeah, and, yeah, I believe we do. When the choir goes down for.
They raise their own funds?
For the trip. Oh, no, we only paid for the one.
Yeah. If we paid for all, then there would be one expensive trip.
Yes.
So we're required to pay for them to go to Six Flags and the aquarium?
Not
We're
really,
not
no.
required, no. And that price, is that probably for just the 2 students in Jonica and not the third?
Well, yeah, I
So
believe.
that
Well, yeah.
might all be, that might all be a little skewed with the money. They may have to contribute some on it, depending on how the funds wash out and they decide whether or not they're going by bus or by plane.
Because the plane could jack the price up too.
But then they lose a hotel stay, so there's food in the hotel extra night. So I don't know if they get better rates. I just, that's what I read in that thing, is they were still undecided on how they go.
And as one who's gone through the whole academic games kind of thing, I mean, making nationals is quite an honor and an accomplishment, so
That's pretty.
I would be okay with rewarding them with a trip.
Right.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
And those are discounted rates. They're not like,
We don't really have a lot of money to spend on a gifted program. This is
Right.
A little bit of spending, yeah.
And with the addition of the extra student, I don't know if, I mean, like I said, my policy is 500, but it's, you can't max it, max it out at 3,000, so we'll just make sure Mrs. Walters knows that it's $3,000 and you got to figure out what it is, what the difference is, so.
So what does she do if it goes over the 3,000?
Parents, they should have to come up with funding somehow, parents.
She's not using gifted funds for this at all? Hasn't she used gifted in the past?
I'm not 100%
for
sure.
nationals.
So if it's
We can
up
look
to
at that, we can
$3,000
look if there's
per
funding
student,
left over in her
About
travel.
3,000 per student.
Yeah, because I thought
3,000
they
total.
used a gifted program.
No matter
when I
how
was
many
a kid.
kids go.
Okay, we'll look into that. Okay. 2, social events, 7th grade teachers are requesting permission to take the 7th grade class on their annual trip to PNC Park in Pittsburgh for Educational Day program and then the baseball game on Thursday, May 26th. The students will leave at 8:30 and return approximately 4:30. New policy 011, which was enclosed, which is the principles of governance and leadership, which has been on display since February meeting. The policy is now recommended for approval. District policies revised 300 section. Do we want to hold off on that one until the very end of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5, approval of Mr. Mancini attending the APPS event, Google Apps for Education Conference in Winnetka School District, Illinois. Will be funded by Title IIA federal funds for special development.
At some point, I wanted you to discuss Title I and Title IIA.
Can we do it now?
Whenever you feel it's most.
Title IIA is used for 2 purposes, and that's class size reduction and also professional development. That's the only two things you could spend it on. We spend the majority of it on teacher salaries. We find the lowest costing teacher, 2 teachers in the district in the elementary, and we pay their salaries, and then whatever's left over is used for professional development. Teachers put in for conferences, workshops, we write it off to Title IIA at the IU, and it's covered by them. So that's pretty much the restrictions as far as Title IIA. We had the Google Apps trainers come in for $13,000 or $14,000 this year. We paid for that through Title IIA funds. So we use it whenever a teacher, or, we come up with some professional development, we try to expense it toward that. The teachers that went to Pete and C this year, the technology conference, we were able to pay for all of that through Pete and C. That's why you didn't see any expenses at all for those teachers to attend the technology conference, state technology conference this year.
When was that?
Last month, a couple of weeks ago.
The 22nd.
22nd.
How many went this year?
4.
4.
Well, it dropped significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 presenters.
Yeah, 2 of them were.
Presenting.
And Mr. Sensen fan, we sent him because he was new. We thought he'd get a lot from that conference, so.
Are we going to hear a report from the conference?
We can. Want to hear a report together?
Yeah, we can get something together.
That would be great, thank you.
Okay,
Title I.
Title I, obviously, 2 schools, Perry and Northside, for reading. They're all school, title schools. We used to be targeted, certain students, but now every student is considered Title I. That money is paid for basically 3 Title I teacher salaries and aides. Pretty much takes up all the funding except at Perry. Usually there's some money left over. It's divided up by building, so that's how Mr. Keeley's a lot of times is able to buy some extra technology and so forth. North Side usually is not left over because they have 2 full-time Title I teachers there. So that's pretty much where that whole salary, or that all of that money goes towards salaries for those staff. We just got this year's allocation. It's down about $5,000 from the year before. You just never know what the federal government's going to give you. And they're late this year. It's, obviously all kinds of issues. The state held on to Title I money, and I think there's a lawsuit right now about that from PSBA because they were gaining interest off of it when they should have released it when it came out. So we'll see where that ends up going, if they'll give that interest back to the schools or not. So but Title I is pretty much spent all year. And again, as Mr. Zerone said, we go through the IU for all of that. All the money is held at the IU, and then Rich submits salary information, and we submit any kind of extra purchases through them.
Thank you. I just wanted the new board members to be aware of how the Title I and Title IIA money was spent, because I wasn't even aware of how the difference between Title I and Title IIA and where the money comes from, so that you know where it can be used.
Thank you.
2016-17 Lincoln High School Plan Course Guides for the new classes and the changes to the technology classes and the engineering programs, part of the new classes for next year. The guides are recommended for approval at the regular meeting.
I do have a couple questions on that, if you don't mind. And I guess these would be directed to you, Mr. Lake. As I'm looking at these, the computer 7, 8, and then there's, let's see if these are in order. I don't think these are in order of age or grade level. Can you tell me again which classes are going to be mandatory, like 7th grade? They're going to be in which ones that are automatic?
Every 7th grader will take Computer 7 for 45 days,
Okay,
STEM 7 for 45 days,
okay, so it's the STEM.
yeah,
Okay.
Art 7 for 45 days, and then an RTI class for 45 days. That'll be one whole period. So
Okay.
the student will go through 4 rotations every quarter.
Okay,
In 8th grade,
same.
no, it'll be Computer 8 for 45 days, STEM 8 for 45 days, and then opposite of that will be their music class
Okay,
every other day for 90 days.
okay. So the STEM and the computer are the ones that are a half a year program for seventh and eighth
Yes.
grade.
Mhm.
And then the other classes.
Engineering 1 and 2 will be semester electives,
And the-
9 through 12.
Okay. And the, like, desktop publishing.
That's a new
year-
class that we're offering.
Is that just high school
Yes,
then?
9
Like
through 12.
9 through 12?
Correct.
Because that one didn't have that on
Mhm.
there, or I don't think, maybe it did. And then there was some programming classes I thought I saw.
Yes, yeah, which we have programming now. It was just a revamp of what he's currently doing.
Okay, and is that offered only 9 through 12?
9 through 12,
Also,
yes.
not 7th and 8th?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else have any questions about the new classes, new schedules? Thank you.
I'm happy that you guys got our kids in there, and, I mean, I think it's gonna be a program to get them involved, to get them interested in engineering and mathematics and STEM education altogether, so I give you guys credit for.
Well, that's you guys too. Without you saying yes, it's not gonna happen, so. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Title I parent involvement policy, federal audit again, Title I, happening again this year. Part of the audit will be the review of Board Policy 917, parent involvement, family involvement, Policy 918, Title I parent involvement. It was sent out to you. There aren't any changes, it's just that it has to just be approved and reviewed by the board, and that, so that it'll be approved at a date in April. There are, as Mr. Zerone said, uniform grant guidance policies coming down from PSBA soon, which we'll probably have to get it started in April. They're changing, Title I is changing the way that they are regulating it, Title I, so the 917, 918 we already have. We're not recommending any changes to it. Mrs. Gibson looked at it, and we just have to update the date on it that it was reviewed by the board. We feel that it's appropriate policy, and it's one we've been using for forever, so that's just a thing we have to do. Policy 808.1, we've also sent this to you for student meals for review. Was brought up at the last board meeting about the policy as far as student meals and how that occurs when students aren't served a meal at the high school for being over, and the elementary get a meal and so on. So just kind of opening that up for any kind of discussion. I believe it's toward the back of your packet.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it. I know you are aware that I was one of the people who brought up the bread basket program to Ellwood. I have a need to feed people, as they say, and I was just a little caught off guard hearing that, you know, the kids K through 6, we give them something if they run past, but we're not doing that for 7 through 12. And I would like to see how the board feels about doing the same thing K through 12. I think that any child that's here needs to have something if they're hungry. It's, you know, it's not their fault if their parents didn't give them money. I understand, I think that we do a very good job on trying to get the money, and I still believe that it's established in our policy that the money has to be repaid for graduation, but I still think that from an educational standpoint, if a child's hungry, they're not learning. And I don't know exactly what we even give K through 6, but I'd like to see it carried K through 12, that any child who is delinquent on their funds, they get an alternative lunch.
Would we have any legal grounds to make them pay what's owed at the end of the day?
Graduation.
What we do is that just keeps carrying, we have students that carried over by the time they're 12th grade. When it comes diploma time, they get a little slip saying you owe $250 to the cafeteria, you're not gonna get your diploma. You owe this book, you owe this fund, you know, whatever, so, you know, all that stuff, you know, that's reconciliation at the end of their high school careers when it all occurs. So,
Are they permitted to participate in graduation exercises?
No. If they don't turn that, they don't pay off their, if they don't clear their dues, everything, that they don't participate, they don't get their diploma, so.
Is there a reason we wait until 12th grade and don't do it at the end of every year?
We don't.
We ask for money, it's just, that's when the hammer
They
falls.
have
That's when
no
the,
choice.
that's the only thing that we really have, that
You can't hold the grades back.
can't hold their grades, that's illegal. You can't hold their report cards.
So you just have graduation.
Graduation's the only thing that you can really do as far as holding anything. Incomplete grades, any kind of debt, books that they've lost, they've got to pay for, track all that, and,
Mattresses that their kids broke.
right.
Field trip.
Mattresses?
That was my son, yeah, that was before graduation. Anything that's owed to the school must be paid for by graduation.
That's true.
So is there names read at graduation, or?
They mostly, I mean,
What they
they're
pay.
paid.
I've never had
That's
nobody,
right,
they're
they're
gonna-
under
paid.
my
They pay.
tenure, everybody's paid.
It's nobody's, they all pay it.
Pay by
It's all-
that.
yeah. Parents pay for graduation parties and whatever, so.
If you get a jumper, gets like a $400 bill, here it goes to another school district.
I mean, it happens, we don't, what we won't do is we don't release.
it's
We don't
not-
release their
we won't
transcripts
release their transcripts or records
until it's paid.
And they're not getting whatever lunch they want, they're getting an alternative lunch. It may be an energy bar and a thing of milk. It may not, they're not getting their choice of french fries and whatever.
It has Mr.
Yeah,
It says it's at the discretion of the food service
Yeah,
director.
at this moment, at this time, we're providing a sun butter and jelly sandwich, milk, fruit, and a vegetable, so we give them a full.
Wow, so you are giving them a full lunch. And again, I'm even okay with just so they have something in their stomach so that they are able to learn.
Is that
Yeah, they have
or is
to have
that charged?
We still charge that against their account.
So it still gets squared up at graduation.
At the end, right.
But
You just have to
theoretically,
wait
someone could
5
do
years
this
for it.
for 2 years straight, every day.
Yeah.
We carry the balance until they
Until they
pay.
graduate.
Right.
Send a letter home with a report card.
They are, they
Phone
do.
calls.
With calls.
Phone calls.
Constantly.
Right, the administration does an excellent job of maintaining it, but again, is it the child's fault? And if they're hungry, are they going to learn? And I mean, if we're doing it K through 6, I just don't see why. And maybe we don't want to do a full lunch, maybe we are just going to do the peanut butter and jelly and a milk, just so that they, sunflower.
Sunflower.
Right, not peanut butter. We are peanut-free school.
Flour, yeah.
The sun butter and jelly sandwich.
As we sit here with Reese.
That's
So-
right. Yes.
This policy that you have in place now was before me, but there is law that says I have to feed those K through 6 children, and that we don't have to feed the 7 and 8. Now, I know that you're saying that you want to do that, and I'm at the direction of the board, obviously, but it wasn't just arbitrarily decided that we're gonna feed these kids and not these kids. There is legislation or law or something.
Okay.
I can't give.
So then we
it
could,
is- it
so we
does-
could then decide a different alternative meal for them that isn't the full-fledged lunch.
If I am forced to give them, if I give them the K through 6, it has to be a reimbursable meal. And reimbursable is those, at least 3 of 5 components, one of which has to be a vegetable.
Okay, but would that pertain to then the 7 through 12 if there is not law mandating that they're fed?
I'm not comfortable answering that.
Maybe that's something that Mr. DeCaro needs to look into. 'Cause like I said, a lot of those kids don't eat the
I'm not trying to keep
vegetables.
anything from you, I just don't.
No, I
don't wanna give you
appreciate,
that answer.
that's why you're here.
But we can still give it to them and put it on their account.
Right.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, over the years, we have tried to collect this before graduation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, at that time, now it's all of a sudden, it gets taken care of.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried a couple different ways.
So not faulting the administration, I do think they go above and beyond trying to collect, but I still feel like the kids need to have something. Again, we can have Mr. DeCaro look into whether it needs to be a full-fledged lunch, or if it is just a
I went out saying that.
a sandwich or a power bar or whatever and milk, so that there is something in there.
You might be able to collect even more money when they're just handed the sun butter sandwich.
They may decide that they're going to bring something to
If
school.
I have to eat, I may as well pay for it.
Just to, I mean, I want to ask Mr. Kromer this, but just to throw it out there, so a kid over his balance comes through the line, we still take his lunch and have to throw it out.
Yeah, right.
And then give him
Yeah.
sun butter,
That's,
so, just so you're aware of that, I mean, he's still gonna,
Yeah.
But
the
they're
lunch
gonna-
is gonna be taken off him, it's gonna be put in the back, it's gonna be thrown out because it went through the line already, then they're gonna be given a sun butter.
Could we just not do that, whatever they're coming up,
Just
just
charge-
charge them
just
for
charge
that,
them
and
for
just let them
that?
rack up a bill?
because then there's
I
no
mean,
way to
that's
stop
not
them
always-
from getting the
that's
extras
true.
too, right?
There isn't any way, because the
What's
way
that?
our lines are set up, they go through the line, they can put
Yeah,
anything they
that's-
want on their
that's a
plate,
law.
and if they don't
No,
have
no,
it.
no,
Give it-
I
you're-
mean, we're throwing it away anyway.
You're throwing it
I
away.
Yeah, to the
understand
kid
it.
and charge it,
Here's
charge
the
them
thing,
for
They'll
it.
just
we're not
get-
talking about kids that are free or reduced lunch, those kids are, they eat, they're taken care of. We're talking about kids who, for whatever reason, their parents are too lazy to send them their money. And that's, someone needs to have some responsibility somewhere, let's be honest.
Well, sometimes it's not that the parents are too lazy, they give them X amount of dollars to last them a week. And
buy
they go
ice
through and
cream
blow
and-
everything, and then the
that's-
parents said, fine, I done that to my kids. If they spent money on Tuesday,
And
they
they
used
learn
their
their
own money,
lesson.
or they figured something else out by the end of the week.
Well, they have it directly put onto their accounts now through their parents. So, I mean, if those are the parents, then they're going to, I mean, if the kid knows he's out of money, which they're being told when they hit, what, 675? They're told that they don't have any money, so they know. So if they're going through the line after that, then.
They're told before that.
Right, so they know they don't have money, but, you know, is it the parents or is it them eating a bunch of garbage? But
Is it possible to charge them before they go on the line?
Yes, Mr. Kromer, it's not possible to charge them before they go into the line, correct?
No, because the cashier has to be able to identify that's a reimbursable meal. So I can't charge them until, because we get federal and state reimbursements, I can't charge them until I know that they received a reimbursement meal. So the cashier has to be at the end of the service line.
And there's no way to let them go through and know that that's what they're getting and then make them take one of each item before they come out of the line. Like the reimbursable meals.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Well, if somebody went through the line at the beginning and they know that there's a negative account, or if it's a reimbursable meal, then they know they have to have the fruit, the vegetable, is it the main and the meat, and
Well,
fourth
the trouble
component?
that I would have with that would be identifying those students as they get in line. I think what you're asking me is to tell a student, you have to get this meal, you can't choose what you want before they go through the line. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, I didn't know if there was a way to get out, you know, that they know what they're picking, so that, you know, color coordinated little things that they put on their tray, so that people know what they're supposed to get, if there's 4 items or 2 items, or.
He has a sign that says like what constitutes a meal. I think that's what she's asking. He has a sign that constitutes.
Okay,
what
what
would
the
a
components
meal-
are of the
Yeah, it's not the
specifics.
exact same lunch if it's reimbursable. It just has to meet those 3 qualifications. And he has a sign that designates, and so they should know.
Mr. Keel, you'd like to?
I have 3 kids to high school. If they're gonna be allowed to go through the line and eat without money in their account, then I'm gonna get a bill for $600 at the end of the year, and that's gonna hurt. Cause now, when they're in the hole, they're motivated to come home and say, I need money on my account. If they're less motivated, then it's gonna hurt me a lot more to write a $600 check around Christmas than it is to write checks intermittently along the way. So that scares me as the responsible person who is putting money on my kids' accounts as we go, because I have 3 at the high school.
But you can check them online. You know, pay online with a credit, I mean, they can't make it any easier.
Right.
Right, but there are kids, I mean, clearly that aren't, how many would you say are not paying, I guess is how I'd say.
I'm gonna say there's probably 20 or 30 right now at that high school level.
Wow.
And, this is, I never get your money. Nadia has really been working hard on letting those kids know, if you don't have if you don't have money in your account, don't even get in line. She's been working on that.
I mean, I think Tony and Janine, they told a kid last week at 35 cents. And a lot of the, even admin are asking me, like, how many kids don't eat? I mean, I have students that choose not to eat because they just wait till they go home. So for us to really say a student isn't eating because of a debt, I can't clearly say that. I mean, we'd have to poll them on a daily basis, or I'd have to talk to each student on a daily basis. I can recall maybe 1 or 2 times this year where a student was upset because they hit like the 675, but they had been told for days and we had already made phone calls. So, you know, it's a little more complicated than they just choose not to eat, because a lot of them choose not to eat because they don't want school food, or they go home and eat a snack and then eat their meal. You know, everybody has different eating habits, so it's not as clear cut as it seems. Like, we don't have 7th and 8th graders crying on a daily basis. I rarely ever notice that a student hasn't had food. You know, I mean, last time I can think about it was probably several months ago. And I mean, that student has a wraparound, and we called home like 5 times, and we're in touch with Leslie and Debbie Wish. We were all calling home for 3 days straight. So.
How much is a lunch?
High school lunch is $2.
At the high school.
So,
Can I come closer?
sorry.
Sure, you pull your seat up if you want.
I mean, what, I think Jenna's point though, they have to be responsible for paying. I mean, somebody has to be responsible, and by them racking up a bill, I mean, it's gonna hurt the people that are paying the bills, you know, so, I mean, if it's $2.20, that's 3 days of food that you can get. We can make it 5 days, make it $11, and they have a week to get their money back, the whole 7 days to get their money back, and that's kind of meeting somewhere in the middle. I don't know, because I think you have to hold them responsible. I don't think it's fair to the parents as well to let one of their children come in and rack up a bill without kind of their knowledge.
Well, I mean, you'd have to send something home or do a call out saying that this is the policy. I mean, they'd have to be updated.
But they are calling
They
us.
already
They
are.
are calling
We
us.
are
But
doing
if-
that.
But if they're not, I'm saying to change in the policy so that the good parents who are giving the money know that these kids aren't going there. And, I mean, you'd like to think that the good kids aren't gonna go eat a bunch of ice cream and charge a bunch of money to the kids' too. You talk about being responsible. I'm more worried
Pretty
about the
relative
kids
term.
that are going through the line that wanna eat and they're not getting food.
Well,
That's my concern.
instead of holding back too for the graduation, can we work it better, like dances, field trips? You know, the debt has to be paid off before a field trip. You know, we'll feed you, but you gotta pay the debt off before you go on this field trip, or before you go to the prom, or before you go to the homecoming.
Before you have football.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Are we able to, instead of just going to graduation, because you're right, from 7th to 12th grade, you can drag $600.
Well, if a letter goes home too saying you have a $50 balance on your lunch account, I'd like to think that that's going to make a statement too. Like I said, my concern is just for the kids who are going through the line that are obviously hungry and they're not getting fed. That's my only concern. Because some parents just, you know, are absent-minded, or, I don't know, they don't have the money, I don't know. I'd like to think they could call, but not everybody's responsible.
Can I ask a question? Nadia, how many kids do we throw the food away from? Carl?
I'm sorry.
How many kids in a week get their food thrown away?
I think we maybe take 2 or 3 meals a week away.
Yeah. I mean, and I haven't noticed it in months, which means, I mean, they're not coming to me, they're not visibly upset. I'm constantly walking around
And I
there.
would say that of those 2 or 3 meals a week, 2 or 3 of those kids knew they weren't supposed to come and get a meal
Right.
anyway. They were just trying to,
Yeah.
Play the system.
you
Pull
know,
one
sneak
over.
through or
Yeah.
get by or whatever.
Well, the other factor involved in this thing, and I want to go back and double check it, but PDE came down with regulations saying that anything that is uncollected at June 30th, that expense goes to the general fund. So we may be collecting it after the fact, but we just wrote off, I think, over $5,000 at the end of the 14-15 school year for uncollected debt. Again, we may collect that down the road when they're seniors, but, you know, that's a number each June that we're gonna be writing off, and the general fund's gonna be paying it.
So when you're adding that extra lunch that we're gonna charge them for X amount of years, we're writing that off also.
The general fund's paying for it, which means the taxpayers are paying for it.
I think we need to leave it from 2 to 3 a week, I think we need to leave it alone.
Legally, is there any other ways that we can get the money through the magistrates or anything like that at the end of the year?
Look to see, yeah, if we could do it, the question would be for the board, if we're allowed to, how far are you gonna, then you get a judgment. So, you know, it's a piece of paper, say they owe you $500, you're gonna sell the
You're
car,
sending it to the administrator's court.
collect the 500, you know, that's what's gonna happen, is you probably won't take the step to collect it. I mean, if they're that resistant to paying. So,
Like I
how
said,
far are you gonna push it?
My concern is just, like I said, getting them milk and an energy bar, not necessarily a full lunch that's $2.20. It was just to make sure that they had something in there.
Well, at that point, we're not even getting a reimbursement on the backside of it.
But we could still charge them a lesser fee.
Frankly, after, at a la carte prices, it's cheaper to get a meal.
What about $22? Most people operate on 2-week paychecks, $22. You can go unfed for 2 weeks, or you can go unpaid for 2 weeks, and then once your parents get your paycheck in, they gotta pay, or you're not gonna eat the third week. I don't know. I'm trying to find something here in the middle.
Well, as a parent, I would prefer to get the phone call at $6.75 than at $25.
Yes.
Right.
But they already know it's $6.75, but and if it goes up, I mean, these kids are still going through the line, so we're still throwing the food away.
Do they have they don't have the option of getting the ice, when they're negative and they go through the line, you throw it away, it's a meal, it's not the ice cream and.
Yeah, we don't, well,
Well,
they're
they
not
order
supposed to
nachos.
take, they're not supposed to take a la carte items when they're in the negative anyway. We don't sell a la carte items to kids who are already behind.
Okay.
But when,
Was that the question you were
Yeah,
asking?
that's what I wanted to make sure of.
but when they go through the line, can't they pick it up before they get to the register and you know that they're negative?
Yes, they can.
Because that would be the same thing, because when you're throwing that away, it may not be lunch, it could be all a la carte items.
I can't say most of the a la carte items are prepackaged, so
Some of them can be.
some of them can be put back in.
haven't been
Not
there
all of
for
them.
much.
One Paul Fry.
Yeah, I know. Okay. We've had lots of different options, I guess, thrown around.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
What says the board? Mrs. Pansara, would you like to start?
I think we need to leave it alone if it's only 2 to 3 a week.
Mr. Cortez?
Our administrators have tried for several years different ways of collecting money.
All right.
The one we've come up with is the graduation one. I guess the only.
Actually, the
decision
best
we have-
one's been senior privilege. I get it before they become seniors.
Right, okay, there you go.
I'd like the idea of the field trips.
Yeah.
Sporting events.
Dances.
Field trips,
Dances.
dances, yeah.
Extracurricular
Any
activities.
extracurriculars.
That kid's gonna be, if he can't
So you
go,
punish
he
your kid though for
would.
the parents not paying.
That's, I mean,
But a lot of
May
it
come down
probably
to
isn't
that.
the parent not paying, it's the kid's misuse of the funds to begin with.
Right.
That's the thing you don't know,
As I
is
say,
if they don't
leave
have
it
the
alone.
money
Wanna
to
give
put
them
on the
no, that's
account, or
fine.
if it
I'm
is
not
that,
opposed
they're
to
buying
that,
ice cream. It's a hard call.
I agree with Ms. Panzer, it's only 2 and 3 a week that you're throwing away.
Mr. Cortez, I didn't hear your answer.
Oh, yeah, I said just leave it. Yeah.
Mr. Pizzali?
I'm in favor of just leaving it alone.
Mr. Newcomb?
I'm in favor of leaving the policy as is.
I'm also in favor of leaving it as is.
I'd like to give them a free meal, like the reimbursable meal. But
Like I said, I'm a softie when it comes to food. Anybody who knows me knows I feed. So that was, after it being brought up, I didn't realize that. If the board chooses to leave the policy the way it is, then so be it. Okay, let's move on.
Just informational, the MIU4 convention will be held April 27th. At Midwestern IU4 in Grove City. It starts at 5:30, hors d'oeuvres, followed by dinner. Pedro Rivera, the Secretary of Education, will be the keynote speaker at 7:15. Let me know, and also there's Board of Elections, there's convention, election of board members will take place at 8. Reservations have to be made by April 7th, so please let me know one way or the other if you want to attend the IU4 convention.
And I would appreciate it if some of you might attend, because I will be running for the seat that I have right now. I have to be renominated, which I thought that was on here. Oh, it is.
Well, you need more votes.
And I could use the votes, and you get some dinner out of it.
Well, I can't commit right now, but I did check my calendar, and I think I can go.
Would be awesome. As many as we can get, and we will get to see Mr. How did you say it?
Rivera.
A few rolling words.
Matt's card, give me a call.
There you go. Well, maybe we can get him to come to a meeting.
I guess,
Go ahead.
if there's interest in that convention on April 27th, that would also kind of conflict with the budget meetings.
While we're on that
I
subject,
knew that was
That's
a,
why I said it's hard to commit right now, yes.
while we're on that subject, Wednesdays are bad for me. I didn't realize it until I looked at it. Does anybody have a problem with Tuesdays?
I can do some, not all.
It's ahead.
Same weeks, just the Tuesday instead of the Wednesday?
Why did we just do those dates?
Fine, this will be fine,
I hate to be difficult, but.
So are we looking at 5/19,
26 and
26,
three.
the third?
Jen can't make it, it's garbage night. I'm just throwing it out there. If it's not good, it's not good. But
Doesn't matter to me.
Which one, 5th, 19th, 26th,
Pardon me?
5, 19, 26, and May 3rd.
and May 3rd.
Four that are set up, still at 6 o'clock.
Doesn't get in the way.
5,
That's your
19,
night.
26, and May 3rd. Is that, are we doing that, or?
Is that okay with everyone then? Changing the schedules? Okay, is that good with you, Rick? Good right now? Okay. That's Tuesday, all right, Tuesday, you're good?
Yep.
All right.
Rich, there were a couple of things on the approval of minutes. Do I need to tell them this now? I can tell them that after. There's so many minutes. Couple things that were just a little off, and I think it might be easier for me to just show you them because I don't know what
Okay.
days they are. My papers are kind of all swelled up. No, so that they can be.
Now it's air conditioning.
Thanks for taking the lead on that.
It'll rain in here pretty soon.
Let's move it.
300s.
Going into the 300s. All right, we're gonna start the policy work. Everybody has their blue folders?
Sitting on my desk.
Sure, well, thank you. Thank you.
No. Eric, you okay?
I'm all right.
Maybe me? She's on flush. She's a little red.
I don't blush.
What about personnel? Should we go into executive session?
Executive
And come
first,
back?
and then come back. Let's do that.
Okay. All right, we have a little change of plans. We're gonna adjourn for executive session for personnel before we go into, yes, Mr. Newcomb?
These folks are gonna be leaving, right?
That's why we're
Well,
gonna
we're
do
gonna go
executive
executive
session.
first, and then,
And then when we'll come back and go
Alright, so
through.
I can ask Leslie and Jackie a question after, or should I do it now?
an executive item?
No.
No, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Pardon me, because I don't even know the right way to ask this question, but a person approached me about, she said, why can't a teacher request services for a student if they identify there being a problem? And then she started questioning the whole process, and I said, I truly don't know, but there's a meeting coming up, and I'll find out, educate myself in the process. So, I mean, you understand that point, is that
Yeah, like
there's
if
some truth in that?
If a teacher thinks that a child needs special education services, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, there's referral processes in place, so it depends if it's an academic concern or a behavior and social concern. So if it's academic, we would be looking at going through the interventions that we have in place in that building, so, RTI or tutors or PSSA, working through, making sure that student has the interventions that we have available, and then usually if the student isn't making progress, we set up a meeting. In Northside, we have grade level meetings for RTI where we talk about all of the students who we're concerned about or aren't making progress. In Perry and Hartman, we set up individual meetings, team meetings, and then we have parents come in for those meetings. If it's a behavioral social concern, those usually they start with the counselor, and then they would work with the teacher to put some interventions in place, like an individual behavior plan or something like that, and then they would go to an ESAP referral where the ESAP team would make recommendations those would be put in place. So we can't just start with special education. We have to put interventions in place first to see if that helps the student get to where they need to be. But if we see that a student isn't making progress with those interventions, then we move to an evaluation. And that's something that would be decided at the team where we're discussing the student. That would be a recommendation, and I do send out permissions to evaluate following RTI meetings. I have, sometimes we'll do a screening if we're unsure of where the student is falling. We can do a behavior screening or academic screening, but I send those permissions out quite frequently that come from our staff concerns, not just parents. So those are going out a lot. So I don't know why people are saying perhaps they don't know.
But a teacher shouldn't feel that they can't.
No.
And after they need to engage in some of those processes first, so such as talking with the other teachers, making parental contact, having a parent meeting, talking with the principals.
So maybe because we're getting this, I'm getting it third or fourth hand, that could be the fact that the teacher said, well, we can't go right to that level, we need to do this, this,
I think
and
some
this,
people
and
want
of
to
course-
jump from here to
Right.
there and not go through different steps.
We have to put interventions in place first. We can't, special education, we have least restrictive environment. Once a child is in special education, we can't just go from being a general education student to requiring special education. We have to do everything we possibly can to make sure that that child has every opportunity to be successful, whether that's academically, socially, behaviorally. And we have the resources, to put those interventions in place. We have, academic resources in every building. So we have counselors
that are there for, looking at those social and behavioral things. They put behavior plans in place regularly, they do social skills groups, they do lunch bunch groups. So we have a lot of things in place to meet those kids' needs. And when we look at going forward with an evaluation for special education or screening or evaluation, it's really because we see that a student isn't making progress, even with interventions in place. And then we say, okay, well, there's something going on here, and we can move forward.
So if a parent has a concern that maybe it wasn't working out or the kid slipped through the cracks, I mean, what's the best recourse for a parent to follow? Who do they contact?
I always direct parents to first talk to their child's teacher. Sometimes I'll get calls from parents and I'm their first phone call. And I'm like, I shouldn't be your first phone call. You should really be talking to their teacher to see what's happening in the classroom and what has been put in place and what did work and what didn't work, and let's move forward from there. Parents are always able to call and talk to me or Leslie. If they have concerns, we talk to parents very frequently. They're able to request an evaluation if they feel that that is what the process that they want to go to. If it's our staff that we feel like there's something that the child needs, we start with interventions because we have to start with interventions. That's your question.
Yeah, that makes sense, just for better understanding. Thank you.
Ready? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn for personnel. And we'll resume the meeting after our personnel.
Do a 5-minute break.
And a 5-minute break. Mr. Cortez.
Gotta get you, go.
Quick question about the tax revenue anticipation.